Alright folks, moving on to our grammar lesson. This is part 2 of modals, changing the mood of a sentence. Modals, part 2. And this one entails using the words should, must, and should have done. Should, must, and should have done. Alright. These 3 words, or 2 words in one phrase, help you talk about rules, obligations, and advice. An obligation is something you should do, something you're responsible for. Alright, so let's start with should. Let me get this up here so you can read it. Now on the live screen, it's going to run together. It's going to run together a little bit. So sorry about that. There's not much I can do about it. Here we go. Should. We use should to give advice. So example sentences for giving advice with should. If you want to learn English, you should practice as much as possible. If you want to learn English, you should practice as much as possible. And you should watch my show. Remember, English drives me crazy. Next, we can also use should to talk about what we expect to happen. So, he should be here by now. He left over an hour ago. He should be here by now. He left over an hour ago. And the negative of should is shouldn't. You shouldn't eat so much chocolate. It's bad for you. You shouldn't eat so much chocolate. It's bad for you. Okay, that's should. Now, moving on to must. Using the word must. Here we go. We got a lot of must. Here we go. Alright. We use must to talk about obligation. Things that we're responsible for. So, I must call my grandmother today. It's her birthday. I must call my grandmother today. It's her birthday. If you want to say the opposite, that there is no obligation to do something, use don't have or don't need to. So, if you want to say there is no obligation, use the phrase don't have to or don't need to. That's the opposite of must. So, you don't have to wash the car. I'll do it. You don't need to put the trash out. I've already done it. We can also use the word must to talk about what we think is logically certain. So if you think something is certain logically, step 1, step 2, after 2, your brain tells you it's probably 3, you use must. You must be tired after all that traveling. You must be tired after all that traveling. If you want, alright. Now, opposite, if you want to say that something is logically impossible, the opposite of logic, don't use must, use can't. Use can't. Who's at that door? That it can't be the postman. He's already been. Who's at the door? It can't be the postman. He's already been. Alright, next. Mustn't, the word mustn't, must not, mustn't, means that it is not allowed to do something. So, you mustn't feed the animals in the zoo. It's not allowed. Alright, so that's must. And the opposites of must. Now, down to should have done. Should have done. Here we go. Last bit. Should have done. All right, listen to the example of this dialogue. You know, my car was broken into yesterday. How terrible! What did you do? Oh, nothing. You should have called the police. We use the pattern should have done to talk about what we think would have been the best thing to do. However, the past event we are talking about cannot be changed. So the pattern after should is have done, not should do. So this is always in the past tense because you can't change the past. You should have done it. Should do means talking about the future. So with this, should have done is always talking about the past. In the example dialogue I just read, the person did not contact the police yesterday, which is in the past. So you can't change the situation. You can only say what action would have been the best in that situation. So, you can't change it, you're just suggesting that's what you should have done. So, that is it. Should, must, and should have done. That's our grammar lesson for the night. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to email me through myuncledan.com. I'll answer all the questions you got.